Hi guys, I'm going to do a quick look at my GX4000, and I just bought this picoGX cartridge, which is probably the best $100 New Zealand I've ever spent in my life. So have a look at it in action and take a look at some of the gear I've got here. So I bought this probably 4 or 5 years ago. I just kept an eye out for one here in New Zealand because obviously they never got sold here originally, so I just kept an eye out on Trade Me, which is our equivalent of eBay, and eventually this one came up. Wasn't super expensive because the guy selling it didn't know anything about it, or even whether it worked, so I kind of took a bit of a punt on it. I suspect this was a French one originally, because I know the crocodile or the alligator or whatever it is was the sort of mascot in France, but obviously that's the box. And what's it got? Blurb wise on here. So yeah, we've got some stuff in French there. What's on the top? The warning: plug it in this way, don't plug it in that way. And it says you need a SCART socket, and a British power supply is included. So I'm still a bit confused as to where that was probably sold originally, but you guys might be able to tell me. Some super happy little girl there and boy playing, obviously not playing Burning Rubber because it's complete rubbish. What else have we got? Those two the same, are they? Yes, more or less. There you go, there's a bit of a sticker on there telling you maybe that's our serial number, perhaps. Not sure. What else is noteworthy here? Not a lot. So when I received this, the controllers there were still had their little cables tied up with cable ties, so I don't think this thing had ever actually been turned on before I got it. So God knows where it's been all its life. The controllers, you can see there, they've still got the plastic on them. So I've left that on there. I don't know how long that will last if we're actually using it, and I'm intending to use it a bit because I'm thoroughly enjoying just working through the old games and those that have been converted. So yeah, everything works. Took me a bit of effort to get it up and running. I had to, because I don't have a SCART TV, and some of them exist in New Zealand but not many, but this particular plasma doesn't have SCART, so I had to go and buy from Temu this little box which cost me 20 or 30 bucks, and you put SCART in the back and a USB power, and HDMI comes out the front, which is pretty cool. And obviously I've got a power adapter there which adapts from the Amstrad brick, which are pretty notorious. I read a few places about them burning people's houses down, so we'll see. And plugged into an adapter so we can put it into New Zealand's 240 volts. What else was in the box? So I got some nice polystyrene packing. The only thing which is a bit of a pain is that the polystyrene is broken on that side, otherwise it would be pretty much all mint. I've got the original Burning Rubber, and God knows why they decided to sell that as the feature game, because it is terrible. I've got a spare SCART lead there. I'm not sure whether that's the one it came with or that's one I picked up at a second-hand shop. Maybe that, I don't know where I got that little, I've got two leads, a short one and a long one, so obviously one of them came with it and one of them I've picked up somewhere. What else? So I had in this nice little plastic bag a GX4000 manual, which is literally in mint condition, and it's got some French on a sticker there again. So again, I'm not sure why it says British power supply and everything's in French with SCART, but maybe British and French power supplies, power sockets are the same. I don't know, I can't be bothered typing it into Google to find out. But the Burning Rubber manual in mint condition. Why you need a manual for that, I don't know. Amstrad, congratulations, you are a sucker. You bought a GX4000. Blah, 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 guarantee. And this card that you can send off to Grand Rue Sauvres with a guarantee for an ordinateur personnel. And yeah, that's pretty cool anyway. That's the legit. So I will put all those back in the nice little plastic bag and try and keep it in good nick as best I can. Right, what's next? So this cartridge. So if you're watching this video, you probably know about these. Someone's obviously 3D printing the cases, and it's a Raspberry Pi Pico running the software. It's got an SD card in that slot, a USB-C socket, and a little firmware update button. So the SD card I've got on it is one that I just happen to have in my old phone, which is 128GB, which is overkill. But that's just what I happen to have spare laying around. So when I first got this, I got all excited, copied some games onto it. And actually one annoying thing is that sticker's not sticking on properly there. So I'm going to have to put a little bit of glue or something under that, which is one little minor nuisance. One other minor nuisance too is that it doesn't perfectly close up. You can see that? It's loose. That's alright. I'm sure it'll hold together. So when I got this, it's the SD card stored a bunch of my old photos and music and all sorts of rubbish off my phone. So I thought, oh well, I'll give it a go. It was formatted as exFAT, which is one of the recommended formats. And I dumped some games on there, plugged it in, and of course nothing happened, as I suspected it probably wouldn't. So I thought, well, maybe the thing scans the entire file system at startup, trying to read where all the CPRs are, which of course would kill it because there's a million files and folders. So I deleted everything, copied my CPR files back across, and it still didn't work. So I was getting a bit nervous at that stage. So I formatted it as exFAT, which it already was formatted as, copied my CPRs back on, and then it did work. So I was like, phew, we're away. So yeah, pretty straightforward, but I would say if you get one of these, just format the SD card first. And if we plug it in and turn it on, so I've got everything powered up. The GX4000's plugged in, the SCART converter is plugged in. Put this in its little slot and it fits pretty well, I have to say, and turn on the power. Now I don't know what my picture's going to come out like on the TV. Oh, you can see that, right? So that is pretty much instant, and you can see at the top that it's got the last game you played, and then I can scroll up and down and use left and right to go through pages, and the two fire buttons to go up and down, which is pretty cool actually. So obviously there's lots of variations on different games that people have converted, and I think it's amazing that people have taken the effort to convert these to make them work with the controllers. It's obviously not a simple job getting in and disassembling, but probably quite a fun challenge. I would be tempted to do it myself if I can think of any games I used to enjoy that need converting, but anyway, I'll cross that bridge one day when it's a rainy day. So one of my games I liked as a kid was Target Renegade, so push the button and see what happens. Oh, I was going to talk to you about the firmware. So this says it's version 1.0.7. I don't know if you can read that in the top right. I'm not sure if that's the latest and greatest. I haven't actually gone and checked, but you can upgrade it just by copying a file to the SD card and holding down a button. So I have to look into that because this has still got a few glitches. The games occasionally won't launch, it just crashes. But usually when you turn it off and on, they work the second time around, so not a big deal. So let's launch this and see what happens. So all of the games give you this little loading screen, I guess, and we're into it. Looks pretty cool. I've got to say, this SCART converter box I've got actually does an awesome job. It looks bloody good. So hopefully at some point something will happen. Oh, yep, here we go. Turn it down a bit. There we go. Right, so obviously this is different to the original menu because you probably had redefined keys and all that other stuff, so I'm going to just push one player and boom, we're off. And I can move around with my little joypad, and whoa, it's just like being 10 all over again. Good times. So that's very cool. So that's pretty neat, but not really what I bought it for, so I'm going to turn it off and back on again. So resetting is as simple as that, just hit on and off. And my little SCART box tells me that it lost its signal there briefly. So what I really wanted it for is I've been dabbling with writing games for the CPC for a while because I just like it as a fun hobby and a challenge, and I'm a software engineer by trade, so software engineering's become a pretty boring profession, you know, it's pretty easy these days. You can pretty much do it in your sleep, so I quite like the old-fashioned programming for the old machines, and I like just like retro games. So I've been dabbling on and off for a while. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I made some games that I could play on my GX4000? Well, now I can. So it's pretty straightforward to take your disk file that gets generated by CPC Telera, which is the library that you can use. It's got a bunch of C functions you can use to write your games, and then it spits out a disk file. So there's another utility called NoCart, which will take your disk file and turn it into a cartridge, which actually works really well. So the game I've been working on recently and kind of finished is this one. So I liked Hill Climb Racer, so I thought I'll just produce something like that. And I got some help with the music from a guy on the CPC wiki forum who helped me out with some music earlier, and he does an awesome job. So I was kind of experimenting with how to program for the CPC Plus, I guess. So there's a bit of a learning curve, but AI helped me out a bit. So you can see I've done some pretty naff sort of blue gradients in the background there. So I wrote this game to detect the plus features and only enable a few bits and pieces if they were detected. So this will run on a standard CPC as well. And I've got this naff little car animation down the bottom that kind of runs along and reveals the text, which is, you know, with these C libraries, it's dead easy to write something like that. Right, let's go. Fire. So writing this, I made the controls all joypad friendly, so as well as being able to type in a 4-character level code, you can use the joypad. Hopefully this is going to work if I remember how to do it. Okay, so there we go. So if I use up, down and left, right, I can go and put in a level code and press fire, and if I got it correct and it matches one of the 255 level codes, it'll take me straight to that level as a means of kind of poor man's save. But if it doesn't find it, it'll just jump us off to level 1. And nice and simple, you've got an accelerate button and a brake, and when you're in midair, the 2 buttons will rotate you, and it's actually quite tricky. So the differences on the CPC Plus / GX4000 version is there's some little cloud sprites up the top which kind of parallax scroll along, and there's a tree in the foreground which parallax scrollers, I think, at twice the speed of your buggy, which is pretty cool. And I had a bit of an experiment with some other things like splitting the screen between mode 0 and mode 1, and splitting the mode 1 colors between the top half of the screen where you've got white and grey, and the bottom where you've got 4 other colors. So just kind of mucking around really, but happy with how the game turned out. I think it's actually quite fun, and I got to say it's awesome seeing it on an actual TV and not just on an emulator, and it looks pretty good, I think. So there you go, there's some mode 0 text there in the middle of a mode 1 screen. Just mucking around to see what's possible. Right, so that's enough about that. That was pretty cool. So that's basically what I bought it for, so I could play my own game. So I'm just going to reset that again. So cool thing about this is the last game you played, it remembers and puts it at the top, so you can jump straight back to it. So after writing that game, I started thinking about something I've been thinking about for a while, which was creating like a 3D Wolfenstein / Doom type game. And I started experimenting with raycasting and all those things, and trying to think of ways that you could do it on the CPC without absolutely killing the CPU, because it's not really designed for doing those types of calculations. And because I'm writing in C, it's not very efficient. If you were doing it in assembler, it would be a lot, not easier, but faster. So I can't really be bothered writing assembler. I've done it in the past, and it's not really it takes the fun out of the hobby, so I'm pretty much staying in C, and that's that. So despite that, we've got something that runs, and if I run it up, so this is Roland in the dungeon. I quite like the idea of having Roland as the main character and keep that sort of mascot alive. So again, I got some music from Mr. Lou, aka Roald Strauss, and which I think is quite cool. So this title screen, I mean, I'm no artist, so I just cheat. I tell AI roughly what I want. A guy wearing green in a hat in a dungeon being chased by a skeleton, and that's what it came up with. And then I run it into my own other software, Retro Game Asset Studio, which I wrote ages ago, which runs on Windows, and you can suck an image into that and it'll give you a loading screen or a sprite, and it will optimize the palette and do all those really useful things. So I can go from typing a sentence saying, give me a loading screen that looks like this, AI spits out an image, I suck it into my program, that gives me an array of bytes, which I copy and paste into the text editor into Visual Studio Code. I press compile, and I can literally have it on the screen within about 2 minutes. And then a naff little scrolling message there. That's pretty straightforward in C. I'll just comment on the font there. I found out that rather than creating my own mode 0 fonts, the easiest way is to just go and find an existing game that already uses a mode 0 font, and just rip the memory directly out of. And Win8, it's actually dead easy, so I've got a bunch of fonts I've just stolen from other games. Cool, so what does it do? So if I push fire, so this game, the previous one, the racing game, I wrote to run on either CPC or CPC Plus, and on the normal CPC it just reverts back to no hardware sprites. On this one, I thought it's already on the borderline of being playable just drawing the 3D, so I thought it would be cool to just put some hardware sprites superimposed on that for the monsters and whatnot. And there's some basic scaling in the hardware, so maybe I can use that for when the monsters are nearer or further. Anyway, what's it look like? Hopefully it doesn't crash. So here I am, and I'm moving around with the joypad. there's a skeleton there that AI generated for me because I couldn't be bothered drawing one. That's why it looks so terrible. And up the top left, I've got my little frames per second counter, and I can walk around. At the moment, I've just got a few hardwired blocks there, and I can walk around them. And what does it say? I'm getting about 10 frames per second or something. And if I spin around, I can go around the back of this block and turn around. There we go. Oh yeah, obviously I'm not clipping the walls at the moment. I've only just set this up so the monster's actually there. And I've got a crosshair, and if I push fire, I get a rifle sound effect that AI generated for me. So in Gemini, I said, go away and look at the how do you play back an AY sound effect with DMA, blah, 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 blah. Go and find some examples, and then look at the format, and then come up with a gunshot effect for me, and then spit out the bytes that I need to feed into the appropriate RAM location to play it. And it gave me some numbers. I pasted them into the text editor, into a C array, and voila. So that is completely AI generated, and I thought that sounded pretty good. Even though I asked for a shotgun, it kind of gave me a rifle. But you can't complain about that. So here I am running around, and obviously I've got some collision detection there. I just ran into a wall, and there you go. Just ignore where my monster is, and there's no scaling at the moment because I literally only just put them in there, and that's me moving left and right. And if the joypad will let me, because it's kind of crap, I can move forward while rotating. Yeah, it does work. The joypad's just not very well designed. Yeah, and if you're wondering what these grey things are at the side, they're supposed to be pillars that sort of just border the playfield. And there's kind of a technical reason for doing that. They're actually hardware sprites because I wanted them to sit on the top, so that if I drew my enemy hardware sprite outside the bounds of the actual playfield, it would be obscured by these pillars on the side. So that's just me being lazy, but my kids couldn't figure out what they were, so that's what they're supposed to be, pillars. So anyway, I kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve, which is to prove that I could do some basic ray casting, which actually turned out to be remarkably simple. So yeah, whether I'll take that any further, I don't know. I'd like to finish it, but it's, you know, whether you can turn it into something playable as an arcade game, I don't know. It's probably borderline running at that frame rate, but I mean, I could go and make it more efficient just by fiddling with the C, or if I got really desperate, I could write some of it in assembler, but like I say, that kind of sucks all the fun out of it. But, you know, just seeing it running on the actual hardware is pretty cool in its own right. That's, you know, I've kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve. So I'll show you one more thing before I go, which is a game I wrote years ago, which was Robotron 6128, which was just a rip-off or a conversion of the arcade game. And some kind person has found that and obviously reverse engineered it and converted it so it'll work with the joypads, which is pretty cool. But if they'd asked me, I could have just given them the source and it probably would have been a lot easier. But I still thought that was pretty cool that somebody had gone to the effort. So if we boot that up, have a quick look. So I can't remember whether I wrote this in C or assembler. I'd have to go back and have a look. I have a funny feeling it's in assembler. But I was pretty proud of that intro because it pretty much copied the arcade machine, and I thought I got that look pretty cool. The guy who did the sound effects for me, Mr. Lou, I thought he absolutely nailed that sound. And I kind of wish I'd put a little more effort into this because I've only got two hands, so unfortunately I can't shoot and hold my camera at the same time, but I thought that sound effect he created when you die is absolutely perfectly faithful to the arcade machine. I was really impressed. And I used a few dirty tricks here to draw my sprites, so I didn't have to draw them masked. They basically just got a black border around them. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, someone's actually put a bit of text in there that says special version for GX4000. How cool is that? Right, I think that's all I've got to say for now. Thanks for watching if you're still here.